Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro Moros attended the ecumenical prayer of the Bolivarian National Armed Forces in honor of the memory of Hugo Chavez. France's trade unions increased nationwide strikes and protests against the President Emmanuel Macron's pension reform. And South African President Cyril Ramaphosa announces cabinet reshuffle and appoints a new deputy president and the electricity minister. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. And now we begin with the news. In Venezuela, the head of the state, Nicolás Maduro Moros, participated in the ecumenical prayer of the Bolivarian National Armed Forces in commemoration of the 10th anniversary of the departure of the Supreme Commander Hugo Chavez. From the courtyard of honor of the Bolivarian Military University of Venezuela, members of the armed forces fired artillery blanks in honor of the Bolivarian and anti-imperialist thoughts Commander Hugo Chavez encouraged in the people and in the military organisms. During the inter-religious ceremony, those who officiated the event agreed that Chavez left an important legacy with his hard work for the recovery of the homeland. In this regard, they also highlighted his absolute passion for the conquest of ideals, even above his physical limits in the midst of the illness that ended his life.
That make us feel proud to belong to this history and make us feel proud to have seen grown, to have seen live, and to have had the presence in the command of the homeland of a wonderful and great man, our Supreme Commander Hugo Rafael Chavez Frias. Thanks to God, thanks to life, to history, for having placed this man in this homeland to free the consciences and to start a long process of centuries of building a new society, the socialist society of the 21st century.
Venezuelan president pointed out the death of Hugo Chavez brought a deep sorrow that was transformed into the spiritual strength to reaffirm the patriotic feeling and to continue walking his path in spite of aggressions.
The oath of patriotism was stronger than the pain and uncertainty to make us move forward, to face all the scenarios that were arising through these 10 years. Today, we have come again to this academy, 10 years later, to tell Commander Chavez, your example was stronger, your courage was stronger, the sacred oath was stronger, and here we are standing, victorious, ready to face new scenarios.
In Venezuela, and during a special interview for TeleSUR, the president of the Union of Socialist Democrats, Crispin Cabacele Chimanga, highlighted the importance of the legacy of Comandante Hugo Chavez for the free peoples of the world.
Commander Chavez is still among us. The testimony of the heads of state were very emotional. Everybody shared testimonies of the important role of Commander Chavez in the fight against imperialism. I take the words of President Daniel Ortega of Nicaragua as an example, when he explained to us the circumstances of the meeting between Commanders Fidel Castro and Hugo Chavez. That was really extraordinary. Then for us Africans, and I am going to say it in a symbolic way, by being here we have visited the Mecca of anti-imperialist resistance.
And like 10 years ago, TeleSUR assumes the responsibility of telling the world the tribute of his people and the world to an exceptional man. From Caracas, our correspondent Rolando Segura tells us the story.
Once again, TeleSUR tells the story from the epicenter of the events. The focus of the news is once again on the tribute of Venezuela and the world to a man, a commander, a statesman.
For us, Chavez is a beautiful legacy. A legacy of love, of kindness, of fraternity. He taught us to love our homeland.
The goal now is to report as it was 10 years ago.
From this place, the Vice President of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, announced to his people and to the world that Hugo Chavez had died, that the physical body of Hugo Chavez had left the battle against the cancer he was diagnosed with almost 2 years ago.
The chronicle of those hours after Hugo Chavez's death was meant to show respect.
I could see the faces and the eyes of hundreds of Venezuelans that in the first moment when they announced that their leader had died, they cried, looked to the sky, and surely prayed to God for life, to their leaders and their compatriots, so that stability and tranquility would be maintained. Also in honor of that flag and his people waiting for it to be tied in half, must continue reporting, because the image says that these people are living what this country is living. It's a moment of immense mourning and immense pain.
10 years have passed and the Chavismo survives Chavez. His followers resist encapsulating him in nostalgia.
There is no way to talk about you in the past tense, Commander. There is no past tense next to your name. You have been in every minute of the heroic resistance. When after your death a single popular cry resounded in the homeland, it was the cry that echoed through the jungles, the mountains, the coasts, the savannas.
Beyond the tributes, Commander Chavez continues to summon fighters, intellectuals, and leaders from more than 60 countries. From Bolivia came President Luis Arce, who considers the leader of the Bolivarian Revolution as a continental unifier since the late 90s, when the story claimed neoliberalism as the last possible world.
It is the year 99, in which Comrade Commander Chavez wins the elections here in Venezuela, proposes a constituent assembly, and totally changed the way of carrying out a policy. Therefore, for us socialists, the commander has always been the hope that arises at the right moment.
Facing the future, progressive forces gathered in Caracas proposed permanent reflection and action on the Bolivarian thought of Hugo Chavez.
Rolando Segura, TeleSUR, Caracas.
Let's take a short break, but first, remember you can follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Peru, social organizations announced continued strikes and mobilizations blocking inter-provincial roads to demand Dina Boluarte's resignation. In the city of Cusco, road blockades and protests are expected to continue in the main communities. Meanwhile, the social movements of Puno have announced that a delegation will be traveling to Lima to take part in pressure actions against the government. For more than 2 months, Peru has been plunged into a wave of demonstrations. More than 60 people have died as a result of police repression. In addition to the resignation of Dina Boluarte, the people's demands are the closure of the Congress and a new Constituent Assembly. In Uruguay, the 2023 school year begins with the application of the educational reform promoted by the government and rejected by the teachers' union, which is urging a work stoppage. Some 700,000 children and adolescents in preschool and primary education will enter the classrooms this Monday and will be joined by high schools and technical schools in a staggered manner, whose personnel in the capital city decided to join the strike, which could be extended to other zones. The measure is in protest against the cut in the education budget of close to $150 million. The protesters said that the educational reform promoted by President Luis Lacalle Pou reduces the quality of education, and they have expressed their rejection of it. Heads of government of the Caribbean community, CARICOM, have resolved to continue efforts to encourage dialogue among Haitian stakeholders and to support efforts at finding solutions to the multi-dimensional crisis facing the country. The heads of government with responsibility for Haiti met on Sunday, the 5th of March, under the chairmanship of the Honorable Philip Davis, Prime Minister of the Bahamas and chair of the CARICOM. They received a report from the Prime Minister of Jamaica, the Most Honorable Adrian Holness, who led a one-day CARICOM special mission to Haiti on February 27th. The mission met with a broad range of Haitian stakeholders to hear their views on the way forward to a Haitian-led solution and demonstrate CARICOM's solidarity with Haiti. The leaders agreed that there must be a follow-up meeting with the stakeholders to chart a path to consensus, building in order to bring peace and stability to the country. And France's trade unions stepped up nationwide strikes and protests to force a policy U-turn on President Emmanuel Macron's pension reform. Unions have vowed to bring the country to a standstill over the proposed changes, which include raising the retirement age from 62 to 64 and increasing the number of years workers have to make contributions for a full pension. President Emmanuel Macron put the plan at the center of this re-election campaign last year, and his cabinet said the changes are essential to prevent the pension system from falling into deficit in the coming years. But they have faced fierce resistance from both the parliament and the streets, with almost 2 in 3 people across the country supporting the protest against it. TeleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat. Dial 461 and enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcast. One final day with us. Welcome back to From the South. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa announced the renewal of his cabinet and appointed a new vice president. In a televised speech, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa announced the creation of 2 new ministries as part of his cabinet reshuffle. One will be responsible for dealing with the power outage crisis and the other for paying greater attention to the government performance. He also announced the appointment of Paul Mashatile as Vice President of the Republic of South Africa. The new minister will focus exclusively on dealing with the crippling power cuts. South Africa's state-owned power utility Eskom has been implementing rolling power cuts across the country for years. But 2022 was the worst, and 2023 has begun with even longer outages and no solution in sight. Last month, Ramaphosa declared a state of catastrophe to deal with the power cuts affecting the 16 million inhabitants. The appointment of a new Minister of Electricity has been welcomed by citizens. Nigeria's opposition leader Atiku Abubakar, who came second in the February 25th presidential poll, took the streets on Monday, along with his supporters, to contest the election results. Abubakar's supporters and members of the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, dressed in black to march to the headquarters of the Independent National Electoral Commission in Abuja and file a petition alleging electoral fraud. The commission has acknowledged that there were technical difficulties in polling day, but rejects the allegations of fraud. Peter Obi of the Labour Party, which came third in the election, has also rejected the results and said he will go to court to prove the Nigerians that he won the presidential election. With 93.4 million registered voters, the turnout was just over 27%, even lower than in the 2019 election. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, warned that close to 5 million people are still acutely food insecure in Somalia. The director of the FAO office, Ryan Paulsen, said that the prolonged crisis has exhausted the coping mechanisms of the country's most vulnerable population. According to the United Nations, in Somalia, there are cases of indigence, displacement, child malnutrition, and other scourges affecting thousands of families. The entity also projects that the number of people suffering from acute food insecurity will rise to 6.5 million between April and June of this year, which represents more than a third of the country's total society. According to the latest official data, at least 96,000 citizens are currently suffering from the worst degree of hunger. And now we move on to other topics. On Monday, the Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu inspected during a work visit to Donbas some facilities built by Russian military, particularly in the city of Mariupol. The officer's visit to Mariupol comes as Russian forces approach Bakhmut, a city in eastern Ukraine that has become the scene of the longest-running battle in the conflict between the two countries. According to the institution, Shoigu toured the port city to oversee reconstruction efforts, and in this regard visited a medical center built by the military, a dispatch center of the Ministry of Emergency Situations, as well as a newly built neighborhood with 1,000 five-story residential buildings. At the beginning of last year, Russia launched a special military operation against Ukraine to defend the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics from Kiev's aggressions. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.